She was just a palace cleaner, until a secret photo with the prince changed everything. They fired her, deported her, called her a liar, but months later he gave up his royal title just to kneel in front of her. Welcome to Rich Side Stories. Kindly tell us where you're watching from in the comment section, and please subscribe to this channel. The palace shimmered like a dream. Glass chandeliers dancing above golden walls, marble floors reflecting the soft flicker of candles. Dignitaries, royals and tycoons from across the Gulf moved with grace, laughing over crystal glasses and silver platters. But no one noticed the girl moving silently along the edges of the room. Naomi kept her eyes low. She wore a faded grey uniform, her hair tucked beneath a headscarf, her hands raw from scrubbing floors that would never belong to her. At just 23, she'd already learned what it meant to be invisible, especially in a place like this. But that night, something changed. While clearing a corner near the dessert table, Naomi noticed an elderly guest stagger slightly. Her eyes fluttered. No one seemed to see it, too busy talking politics and pearls. Naomi froze for a second. She wasn't supposed to interact. If she stepped forward, she could lose everything. But the woman swayed again. Naomi moved. In one quick motion, she reached the guest's side, gently held her elbow and whispered softly in Arabic, "Please sit." She guided her to a chair, steadied her breathing and called for help. Even the palace guards hadn't reacted that fast. Gasps swept through the room, eyes turned, not out of concern for the woman, but toward the cleaner who had dared to step beyond her role. Naomi stepped back, her cheeks burning. She expected shouting, punishment, maybe worse. But something else happened. Across the room, seated beside men in royal robes, a young man leaned forward. Prince Karim, second son of the emir. Known for avoiding palace duties, often called the quiet prince by the media. His gaze never left Naomi. He had watched everything, the moment of courage, the risk she took, the grace in her hands. While others saw a servant out of place, he saw something else. A storm stirred behind his eyes, not of anger, but curiosity. Something had shifted. Naomi didn't know it yet, but the moment she chose kindness over caution was the moment her life stopped being ordinary, and the prince who watched her that night, he would never forget her. Not for the rest of his life. The walls of the staff quarters were nothing like the grand halls above. Here, the air was heavy with bleach and exhaustion. Narrow corridors buzzed with fluorescent lights, and bunk beds creaked through thin plaster walls. The palace was split in two, those who wore crowns and those who washed the floors beneath them. Naomi sat on the edge of her bunk, her uniform folded neatly beside her. Her fingers traced the edges of a worn photograph tucked into her journal. In the photo, a smiling woman held a baby beneath a mango tree in Ghana. Her mother. She had come to Qatar 2 decades ago, just like Naomi, a domestic worker, undocumented at first. Naomi was 5 when she got the news. Her mother had died from heart failure in a stranger's home. No funeral, no goodbye. Naomi had been raised by her grandmother after that, a strong woman who taught her to speak gently but dream fiercely. Still, as Naomi sat in that dim room, it felt like her story was becoming a mirror of her mother's. Same country, same job, same silence. She opened her poetry journal and began to write, soft words in English, Arabic and Twi, her only escape, but the moment was broken by sharp laughter. Writing again. She thinks she's going to marry a prince. Maybe she'll clean his shoes first. The other women cackled as they passed. One of them snatched Naomi's notebook and flipped through it mockingly. Naomi stood without a word. She didn't fight back. She just took her book gently from the woman's hand, closed it, and walked away. She had learned that dreams, especially in places like this, were threats, and silence was a shield. That night, as she lay staring at the cracks in the ceiling, Naomi whispered to herself. I am not my mother's shadow. Her story brought me here. Mine will take me further. But in that moment she didn't know. Someone upstairs already remembered her face, and someone was wondering who the girl with fire in her eyes really was. The palace garden was silent at dawn, just the hush of wind through olive trees and the slow trickle of a marble fountain. Naomi moved quietly between the jasmine and lavender bushes, a copper watering can in hand. This was her favorite time of day. No guests, no orders, just earth, breath, and light. She bent to water a line of rosemary when a soft voice behind her made her freeze. You water them like they're people. Naomi turned sharply. He was leaning against a stone column, dressed in simple linen, no guards, no crown, just a man. But she knew who he was instantly, Prince Karim. Her heart stuttered. Her fingers tightened around the watering can. I'm sorry, she said quickly, dropping her gaze. I didn't know anyone would be here. I didn't either, he said. Then he stepped forward. You're the girl from the banquet, aren't you? She stayed silent. He studied her, not in judgment, but in curiosity. You spoke Arabic. To that woman, and earlier I heard you humming in another language. Twi? Her eyes lifted slightly. That surprised her. Yes. Twi is my grandmother's tongue. Arabic is something I learned because I had to. His smile softened. Most people who learn because they have to never speak it with that kind of rhythm. Naomi blinked. No one had ever complimented her mind here, only her obedience. He looked down and noticed the small book tucked under her arm. What's that? She hesitated, then handed it to him. My poems, she said quietly. Just something I do when I'm trying to feel like myself. He opened the first page and read silently. The sun began to rise behind him, casting gold on the fountain behind his shoulder. Naomi shifted, suddenly nervous. I should go before someone sees me. But Karim interrupted, eyes still on the page. This one, the one about your mother. It's beautiful. She froze. No one had ever read that. I write too, he said almost shyly. But only in English. I've never let anyone read mine. Naomi gave a soft, unsure smile. Then I guess we're both hiding something. They stood there, two strangers from different worlds, rooted in silence but growing towards something neither could name. She reached out to take the book back, and he handed it over. Almost. Their hands brushed. For a second too long. Then she turned and walked away. Karim watched her disappear into the misty hallway, and only after she left did he realize he was still holding one page. Loose sheet, handwritten, folded once. He looked down at it and smiled. He didn't mean to keep it, but he also didn't mean to give it back. It started with passing glances in echoing corridors. Then a whispered "Salam" near the garden gate. Soon, Prince Karim and Naomi were finding ways to cross paths where no one was supposed to be, behind draped curtains, beside forgotten staircases, and, when the moon was kind, on the palace rooftop beneath the stars. There, above the marble kingdom, where the city lights flickered like candles in the dark, two people from opposite worlds talked like equals. Naomi spoke of Ghana, of her grandmother's mango tree, and the sound of rain on tin roofs. She spoke of how the world saw her skin before, her spirit, how she carried two languages in her mouth but often felt voiceless. Karim listened, then shared stories he'd never dared say aloud. How royal life was a prison wrapped in gold, how he envied people who could choose their futures. He brought an oud one night, its wood gleaming in the moonlight. My tutor gave up on me, he joked. Maybe you'll have more patience. Naomi laughed softly, then taught him a song instead, one her grandmother used to sing when cooking dinner over an open flame. He played it, fumbled, tried again. She hummed the melody beside him, her voice soft, haunting, alive. For a few moments each night, the rooftop became their escape. But palaces have eyes. It began with a door left ajar. A voice overheard, a shadow slipping through the hall at the wrong time, whispers curled through the servants' quarters. They say she meets him in secret. A prince, with a cleaning girl. She'll ruin him. She'll ruin herself. Naomi felt the shift. The stairs grew colder, the silence heavier, and Karim was summoned by his uncle, by royal aides, by guards who never spoke unless ordered. You're being watched. Your name is not just your own. She is not appropriate. But it was already too late. On the rooftop that night, Naomi said nothing. She just handed him a folded slip of paper. Inside were lyrics, a song in Twi, with Arabic written beneath in her hand. You asked what freedom sounds like, she whispered. This is mine. Karim didn't answer. He didn't have to, but in the silence between them, the weight of what they risked began to settle. Not every story born in a palace gets a happy ending. Some are buried before they bloom. The golden silence of the palace, shattered with a single photo. It arrived without warning, slid across the polished table in the throne room during a morning security briefing. A grainy image from a rooftop camera, two figures, laughing, his white robe, her grey uniform. Prince, Karim, and the palace cleaner, Naomi, frozen in a moment of joy they never thought would matter. The emir's advisors erupted. She seduced him. She planned this. She's a danger to the royal family. By noon, the story spread like wildfire among staff, then guards, then distant relatives eager to whisper disgrace behind closed doors. By evening, Naomi's name was erased from the system, her badge deactivated, her room emptied, her flight booked. She didn't even get to say goodbye. Two guards came to the staff quarters with folded arms and expressionless eyes. You need to come with us. Naomi stood still, her heart pounding. Why? They didn't answer. They didn't have to. In the throne room, royal officials paced in silence. Karim stood in the far corner, fists clenched behind his back, lips pressed. Shut, the head minister addressed Naomi without looking at her. You have broken protocol. Violated the privacy of this palace. The evidence is clear. His Highness's reputation is at stake. Naomi looked to Karim, her eyes pleading. He looked back, but said nothing. Not one word. Not even her name. That silence crushed more than any punishment. Her voice cracked as she tried to speak. We did nothing wrong. We talked. That's all. But in a palace like this, the truth didn't matter. Perception did, and the perception was betrayal. She was given an envelope. Inside, 1 month's wages, a letter of dismissal, and a one-way ticket to Accra. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from heartbreak. That night, as the plane lifted off the runway, Naomi stared out the window, Doha disappearing beneath the clouds. The city that promised her a better life had spit her out like she was a stain on its marble. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough for 100 lifetimes, but what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that Karim wasn't silent out of shame. He was silent because he was planning something no prince had ever dared before. Ghana welcomed her with silence. No royal gates, no polished floors, just red dust, traffic noise, and the distant smell of street food drifting through cracked windows. Naomi sat on a thin mattress in her grandmother's old apartment, now hers. 1 room, 1 fan, 1 pair of shoes by the door. Everything else felt lost. The palace uniform lay folded on the floor beside her, still smelled faintly of jasmine and lemon polish. She stared at it for a long time before striking the match. The flame flickered, then the fabric curled in on itself, slowly, like it too didn't want to let go of what they'd shared. Ash floated in the bucket, and with it, the last piece of the life she was forced to leave behind. Outside, the world spun on. Inside, Naomi rebuilt quietly. She found work at a small community library, sorting dusty textbooks and reading to children under a leaky roof. She spoke less, smiled when necessary, hid the pain in places no one could reach. but she couldn't. Hide from everything. One afternoon, as she stacked a shelf of worn encyclopedias, a teenage boy came rushing in, holding out his phone. "Is this you?" he asked, screen glowing. Naomi's heart stopped. A tabloid article, blurred image, the rooftop photo. Royal scandal. Prince falls for maid. Sources say she manipulated him for citizenship. Her name trended for all the wrong reasons. She lured him. She planned it. She was just another girl with a pretty face and a hidden agenda. Naomi closed the browser. She didn't scream, didn't cry. But later that night she sat beneath the stars and whispered to the wind, "They erased me, but they won't define me." Each morning she showed up at the library early, sweeping the steps before the children arrived. Each evening she wrote poems by candlelight, lines filled with quiet rage and stubborn hope. And every time she passed a mirror, she reminded herself, "I may be forgotten by their palace, but I'm still a queen in my own story." The palace thought his. Silence meant surrender. They were wrong. For weeks after Naomi's exile, Prince Karim walked the halls of the palace like a ghost, present in body, gone in spirit. He sat through meetings with diplomats, nodded through royal dinners, and endured lecture after lecture about responsibility, heritage, and honor. But something inside him had changed. Every night, he returned to the rooftop, the same place where her laughter once echoed between stone pillars, and every night he read the page she left behind, the poem in Twi, translated by her hand, folded like a love letter the world had no right to steal. Then came the final straw, a family gathering. The emir announced plans to arrange Karim's marriage to a distant royal cousin. "She's suitable," they said. "Respected, pure." Karim stood from the table quietly and walked out. The next morning, the world watched in disbelief. Karim appeared on national television, wearing a simple white shirt, no robe, no crown. "My name is Prince Karim. Al-Thani," he began, voice steady, gaze unwavering, "and I can no longer serve a system that punishes love and protects prejudice." He spoke of Naomi, her kindness, her courage, her intellect, her dignity. He exposed the rumors, denied the lies, and with the poise of a man ready to burn bridges, he said it plainly. She didn't shame this palace. The silence did. And then, live on air, he took off the signet ring from his right hand, the symbol of succession, and placed it on the table before him. "I resign my position in the royal line. I choose truth, not titles." Gasps erupted. The internet lit up. Karim steps down, justice for Naomi. Not your crown thee. Palace issued no immediate response, but by evening Karim's face vanished from the official royal website. The next morning he disappeared. No convoy, no royal jet, no guards, just one man with a bag over his shoulder, boarding a commercial flight to Accra, Ghana. By the time the media caught up to him, he had already landed, alone. He wasn't there for headlines. He was there for her, because some people chase power, others chase peace. But Karim, he was chasing the only woman who made him feel free. The library smelled like old pages and rain. Outside, storm clouds gathered, but inside, Naomi sat cross-legged on a fraying mat, reading aloud to a circle of barefoot children. Her voice was soft, animated, carrying a story about a lion who couldn't roar, but still found his way home. The children giggled, the fan overhead creaked, and for a moment Naomi felt almost whole. Then the door opened. She didn't look up at first. People came and went, neighbors, volunteers, students. But the children turned, their wide eyes growing even wider. Then one whispered, "That man looks like he's from a movie." Naomi looked up, and time stopped. Karim stood in the doorway, drenched from the rain, dust on his shoes, a travel bag over his shoulder. No guards, no crown, just him. In his hands was her poetry book, the same one she thought was lost forever. Their eyes locked across the tiny room. Naomi rose slowly, unsure if this was real. He stepped forward, heart in his throat, and opened. The book, tucked inside, was a small box, wrapped in the same page she'd once written her first poem on. Karim dropped to one knee, not caring about the mud on the floor, the flickering lights, or the curious children now holding their breath. "I couldn't protect you in that palace," he said softly. "I couldn't stop the lies or the silence. But I never stopped. Loving you." Naomi's hands shook. "I still don't have a title," he continued, "but I have a choice, and I choose you every day, in every language, for the rest of my life." He opened the box. Inside was a gold ring, simple but beautiful, with a stone carved to resemble a Ghanaian Adinkra symbol. Iban, meaning safety and home. Then he smiled gently. "If I can't bring you into the palace, then I'll build a kingdom with you." Naomi covered her mouth with trembling fingers. Then she laughed, a soft, broken, beautiful sound, and in front of the children, in that tiny, dusty room filled with second-hand books and first-time hope, she said yes, not to a crown, not to revenge, but to love that never bowed and never gave up. The sea was calm that morning. Waves lapped gently against the shore of a private garden near Lusail, hidden from the press, the palace, and every eye that once judged them. There were no royal horses, no televised procession, just a white canopy, a path of sand and rose petals, and 30 chairs filled with only those who had stood by them when the world turned its back. Naomi stood at the edge of that aisle, the wind lifting her veil like a blessing. Her gown shimmered, not with diamonds but with meaning, Ghanaian beads, hand-sewn in swirling patterns that told the story of her ancestry. Woven seamlessly into Qatari gold thread, symbolizing 2 worlds stitched together by choice, not tradition. She walked barefoot toward him. Karim waited in a simple linen robe, his smile wide, his hands shaking slightly. The imam stood between them, quiet and composed, but even he paused, just for a moment, to take in the sight of the bride who once scrubbed floors, now stepping into forever on her own terms. No royal title was spoken, no Her Highness, no Prince Consort, just 2 names, 2 promises, 2 hearts that refused to bow to fear. But just before the ceremony ended, a silver envelope was passed quietly to Karim by a former palace advisor, one of the few who still believed in him. He opened it. Inside, a handwritten note, marked with the royal seal. It was from his father, the emir. "You have shown what royalty truly means, not in obedience, not in blood, but in courage and in love." Father Karim swallowed hard. Then, from a carved box beside the canopy, he pulled out something Naomi hadn't seen. A crown. But not the one from the palace. This one was crafted by local artisans. Pure gold, shaped like desert dunes, with a polished ring of dark ebony wood circling its base, a blend of West African roots and Middle Eastern royalty. He didn't place it on her head. He simply handed it to her, because in this kingdom they built. Together, she ruled beside him. Naomi looked out at the ocean, the sand, the faces who believed in her when no one else did, and she smiled, because this wasn't just a wedding. It was a revolution, quiet, graceful, and irreversible. The headlines rolled in like a tidal wave. Qatar's Prince marries former palace cleaner, the Black Princess breaking every rule. From brooms to brilliance, Naomi's quiet revolution. They called her controversial, unconventional, courageous. But Naomi didn't answer to headlines. She was too busy building something real. Within 6 months of the wedding, Naomi and Karim launched The Crown Within, a foundation focused on girls, education and creative arts across Africa and the Gulf. No walls, no uniforms, no protocols, just classrooms, libraries, music, and space to dream. She traveled from dusty schoolhouses in Accra to remote desert villages in Oman, sitting with students, listening to their stories and sharing hers. Not the fairy tale version, but the truth, the scrubbing, the silence, the shame, and the choice to rise anyway. The world watched as children who had never seen themselves in royal portraits suddenly saw a queen who looked like them. And then came her first official speech. No palace, no throne, just a microphone and a sea of young faces, brown, black, veiled, braided, hopeful. She stood in a flowing white dress with a sash woven from the Ghanaian flag. The ebony crown rested on a nearby table, not her head. Her hands were open, her voice was steady, and she said, "They told me I wasn't royal because I scrubbed floors, because I didn't come from gold, because my skin did not match their crowns. But being royal isn't about blood. It's about boldness. It's about standing when you've been told to kneel. It's about choosing love over lineage and truth over titles. I was never meant to be a princess. But maybe I was meant to be something better, a mirror for every girl who thinks she is invisible." The crowd rose to its feet. Across borders and languages, the world didn't just applaud. It believed in her, not as a fairy tale, but as a force. Naomi didn't change the system with protests or politics. She changed it by becoming the proof that royalty is not inherited, it's earned.